Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from YellowCat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. What made you lose your job? Part 2. I didn't get fired, I quit. But I would have lost my job if I hadn't quit. I used to work at a very well-known coffee shop in the country called Starbucks. I won't mention the name. We were severely understaffed during this incident, which occurred in the midst of a very difficult morning rush. For the final stretch of the rush, I was put on the drive-thru so we could catch up. This woman is the first customer I have. She's furious that she had to wait more than 3 minutes for her frappe. She claims to have waited 15 minutes, but she was unaware that at Starbucks, we were able to view the length of time each car had been in line. She hadn't been waiting for 15 minutes, but I remained silent. This was the course of our initial exchange of words. She said, "Are you aware of how long I've been standing in line? Do you guys really need 15 minutes to make a frappe?" Me. We're really short-staffed today and in the middle of a rush. I sincerely apologize for the wait, ma'am. Please be patient as the drinks may take a little longer to arrive than usual. She said, clearly angry and irritated, "Does that seem like it's my problem? I want my frappe. I've been waiting here. You should take up the pace so you alone have the team's combined work ethic if you guys are short-staffed." Well, ma'am, if you don't like the work ethic of me and my team and you believe we're too slow for you, then you're more than welcome to come into the cafe and apply for a position as we're hiring at the moment, I said, now clearly annoyed and pettish. Now that her stupid drink is finished, I give it to her, wish her a happy day, and close the window because regrettably she chose the wrong person for the wrong occasion. I briefly leave through the drive-thru and then return to open the window of what I thought was the car that was following hers. I'm met with a venti mocha cookie crumble frappuccino right away and it tastes really cold. I'm shocked when she leaves in her car. This woman had frappe and thrown her new at me. My shift lead had just allowed me to leave for home because it was the end of my shift and they had very good reasons. Globally to my next shift, my store manager calls me into the back right away and says she wants to talk with me about something, which I assume has to do with the frappe incident. She sits me down and informs me that naturally the details of her assault on me were omitted. The woman who threw her frappe at me had called to complain about my nasty attitude that was given the entire interaction and the fact that I had refused to give her drink. I informed my store manager right away of what had really occurred so she could speak with the other shift leads who had witnessed it. Not at all. She warned me that I would receive a written warning for my improper behavior toward the customer regardless of how the customer treated me, but this wasn't the reason I quit. I would have taken the write-up and spent the rest of my time there harboring resentment toward my SM. While she finished up my article, she adds, "And just so you know, I will never speak with you again after this. It won't be a write-up next time." I pause and ask myself, is this minimum wage job really worth all the respect I have for myself? It'll be termination instead. No, it's not. I'm sorry, but since when was it acceptable for a customer to act that way toward me? I responded. When does a grown woman have the right to throw her drink at a teenage girl? Other than this one interaction, when have I ever been uncivil or irritable to a customer? You're correct. This will be our final discussion, and you won't need to worry about firing me because I'm leaving. And walked the H out of that store and never ever looked back again. The information technology work that I did at the very small company where I worked was of the grunt level. I was the only person working in information technology there. My employer was informed 1 month in advance that I would be leaving for a vacation that would last for 2 weeks. Therefore, they hired this one individual they had previously, and his information technology skills were not particularly strong. During the time when they needed to reduce expenses, they terminated his employment. He had to jot down everything that he needed to know in order to perform his job duties. In all honesty, never gave it much thought until the day before I was scheduled to leave for vacation when I received a call from headquarters. It was my manager and HR who were present and I was aware of what was taking place. They basically informed me that I was going to be fired because of a mistake I made a few weeks ago, which was not a major mistake by any stretch of the imagination. In addition, they never even bothered to write me up or mention it in any way that I was no longer required to be there. In addition to that, they had the audacity to say they would see the full extent of the law against me if I hacked in and caused damage. After my departure, I was told that the manager had developed a severe paranoia. At the end of the day, they decided to hire this individual who was making probably less money than I was. Additionally, his coworkers who were not at work were telling me that he was terrible at his job. However, there were a few things that worked out for me. As a result of the fact that nobody really knew how to work with databases and SQL, the previous manager called me and asked if I could potentially do contract work for them. To add insult to injury, I paid them a single penny for it. I increased it to a level that was significantly higher than what they were paying me, but it was still significantly lower than the going rate for bringing someone outside. In addition to that, he released me from my position because they had a student who was proficient in database work. They asked me once more after discovering that the student had made a mistake. I stated that I would not involve myself in that matter in any way because I'm not aware of what they did or what the liability was. However, I needed to be fired in order to feel better. I've been really content with where I'm at for the past 12 years, and I've expanded my skill set by working a few different jobs. In addition, the company where I had been working before went out of business. How do you deal with your terrible HOA or neighbor? Part 2. I reside with my family in a historic home. We purchased it in order to have space for my parents, who at the time were both suffering from terminal cancer. The previous owners of the house took many shortcuts during their 10 years of renovation, and those decisions have repeatedly come back to haunt us. A few years after we bought the house, it needed a new coat of paint, and we weren't able to do it until about 5 years later. We learned how severely the prior owners had cut corners when obtaining quotes to handle it. A large portion of the siding, which was partially original to the 120-year-old house, was genuinely rotted and was only kept together by paint and caulk. Much of the north and south sides had to be redone. We petitioned the Historic Review Board to use wood siding instead of cementitious siding, or hardy board, because the cost difference was too great. My immediate neighbor organized a group of 4 other neighbors to oppose me at the hearing that was scheduled regarding it. This neighbor and I used to get along well. We would invite him over for dinners, movie evenings, etc., and he would reciprocate. As long as we used the same profile, height, etc. as the previous siding, the review board agreed with us and permitted the use of hardy board. We were able to insulate the walls as a result of doing that, which was a huge victory for us because it had previously been very drafty. Our neighbor asked us to stop communicating with him and to stop texting him, saying that we had ruined his dream of living in a truly historic neighborhood. He accused us of being the cause of the issue and blamed us for not painting it sooner. Never mind that one of his friends had been painting a house slowly for years with no paint on most of the cladding. After my contractor arrived at work, our neighbor, who had not yet confronted us in person beyond sending us a text, began to bother him, threatening to call the police because he had been seen using a saw in our driveway at 9 in the morning. He and his old N buddies also began disparaging our contractor and us in upcoming review board meetings. Stupid things like improper installation of the siding and the fact that we were discarding good historic wood. Salvageable wood that was obviously old growth pine was donated, and I kept every single historic nail. Not that it mattered to anyone what I did with my property. Over the next few months, the neighbor persisted in his rude behavior, arguing over the property line, turning up the music, putting demands on our land, and other things. I was really fed up with the whole situation and decided to consult a lawyer. He drew up an official letter and sent it to the neighbor. The letters warned that if they continued their actions, they would have to deal with a lawsuit for harassment and threats. After that, they left us alone, thank God. Before all that, there were warning signs. Strange, weeks-long episodes of passive aggression when he would act as though we didn't exist. He would place big rocks in the yards of some renters a few houses down because he didn't like their partial parking in their yards and on the street, and he would mow our front yard himself if we didn't get to it as quickly as he wanted. The lesson here, I suppose, is to trust your instincts when it comes to people. Despite not living in a homeowners association, my community is still considered a neighborhood region by the city. Every month, anyone interested in getting together can meet with our neighborhood relations officer from the local police department as well as our district city council representative. As you can imagine, there are some individuals among us who would aspire to serve on an HOA board. During our monthly meeting a few days ago, one of my most lovely neighbors showed up with a guest who was dressed somewhat formal. She notes that she filled in the routine items, after which she had time to talk. She stands up, introduces herself, I honestly can't recall his name, and begins to discuss how she would like us to hear him discuss the advantages of creating a homeowners association that'll unite our neighborhood. As per usual, I'm seated in the front and I couldn't resist blurting out FHOAs while trying not to laugh. She looks at me as if surprised and says, "Excuse me?" I got up and said, "Okay. We're not the Southwest, we're the North Side. The majority of us struggle to make ends meet each month, and although it may seem appealing to pay a few $100s more to a suit, guess what? If your trash can's left outside the day before at 11 p.m. or after 7 p.m. on the day of pickup, you'll be fined. Get fined if your lawn's more than 2 inches high for more than a day. Paint colors used on the house do not match. Pay a fine and make the necessary repairs within 14 days. Feed the stray cats observing a woman who does so, and you will be fined. Put out winter protective boxes so the strays don't freeze. Get a fine per box. And look to another neighbor. Judy tried to cut me off several times, but I ignored her. Yes, another fine per day for working on your car in your own driveway. What happens next is that when you fall behind, they lean your house, force you to move, rebuild it, or demolish it, and build something new to increase in value, and eventually drive as many of us out as they can in an effort to elevate the neighborhood while amassing enormous wealth from the theft of our belongings. Never will I sign anything. Judy? As if planning a lynching, everyone in the room turned their attention back to her. It's obvious that it was a failure. He attempted to emphasize his points, but I had answers for everything he said because of all of you who have experienced similar pain. My boss called to inform me that the homeowners association had placed a boot in his car for illegal parking, as he had parked it on the sidewalk adjacent to his home and driven away after leaving it there for 2 minutes to drop off a package at his residence. The HOA arrived and placed a boot in his car in the 2 minutes he was gone, and the guy who did it, an a-hole board member, informed him that he would need to pay $250 to have it taken off. My supervisor called me and told me to bring over an angle grinder from our workshop, saying F this and F you. I approached the HOA board member and proceeded to chop off his boot. They then attempted to impose a further $200 fine on him for damaging their tacky $50 car boot. Because no one save the government can charge you for damaging boots that other people put in your cars, and because HOAs are not allowed to boot cars, the law is on our side in this case. My supervisor said, "F you and go to H, a-holes," in response to the fine. A week after my boss's car was booted once more, I went over and repeated the action. Their faces reddened from sheer rage. After this, my boss kept a fresh angle grinder on hand in case he or another resident experienced this. He released 3 distinct residents. Subsequently, the HOA began using more costly boots, so I had to bring in additional power tools to pry them open because our cheap angle grinder was not long enough. The HOA then sent out a notice stating that due to the loss of $500 in boots and the approximately $15,000 in unpaid parking fines, they would have to raise monthly dues by an additional $75. While some of our neighbors are upset with this, most of them are upset with the HOA for raising fines. We kept breaking everyone's car boots, so the HOA gave up trying to put them on. Along with delivering them to the HOA president's home, we also decided to boot the president's car and a few other a-hole board members when they were found to be parking illegally. We also fixed a few of the boots. This is both a win in my opinion. The neighborhood is resisting the HOA and removing the board through removal procedures, and I stopped the booting. Update. Week ago, the boss said they had successfully succeeded in ousting the old board members. If you want to watch the part 1, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.